Hello, and welcome back to 12 Minutes with Berch. I'm your host, Berch, and today we are exploring the core skills you need to know: empathy and active listening, according to WEF. As we navigate through an increasing complex world, these skills are becoming essential for meaningful connections, professional success, and global impact. Empathy allows us to connect with others deeper, while active listening ensures we truly hear and value what's being said. And today, I'm excited to have Ussal Şahbaz, a thought leader at the intersection of technology, business, and policymaking. With over 20 years of experience, Ussal runs a government affairs consultancy spanning Istanbul and Dubai, and he frequently contributes to global discussions through his columns in Turkey's leading business newspapers. So quickly, Ussal's background is impressive, having graduated from the prestigious Harvard Kennedy School with a master's in public administration. I'm thrilled to have Ussal joining us today on 12 Minutes with Perch. Ussal, welcome. Our 12 minutes started.
Hello, Bert.
Thank you, Ussal. It's great to have you with us. So, we will be going to talk about empathy and active listening today. If you recall your experience and refer your experience working across policy, business, and technology, how have empathy and listening shaped effective decision making?
I think it's the basis of effective decision making. Let me go back and briefly explain what I have been doing for the last 6 years. My company is conducting government affairs on behalf of major tech companies, both local and global, in Turkey and in the wider Middle East. And when you say government affairs, it's basically communicating with the government stakeholders, be them ministers, bureaucrats, or any other public stakeholders that may have influence over these decision makers. Of course, the basis of any communication is empathy, because what you really need to understand when you are communicating your ideas to the other party is where they come from, which relationship system they are in, how they regard you, and at the end of the day, what are their feelings and thoughts. What you do in communication, especially with these, decision makers in the government, is to influence their ideas. And in order to do that, you need to understand their priorities, their obligations, their relationships with other stakeholders, and navigate those waters when you are talking to them or, presenting some ideas or writing. All of this is based on empathy. And obviously, in order to understand these things, you need to listen to them. You, of course, need to do the background research, but listening to them from the first hand is essential. Most people actually, when you say communicating, they just pitch their ideas. Especially in the technology industry, we are very much used to pitching our ideas, but it doesn't work that way with the government. You first need to listen and then pitch your ideas in a way that is suitable for their priorities or feelings.
That's a very important point that you have already tapped into listening. So one of the examples that I would like to give, and which is coming on my mind, is about education system. Everybody is talking about why Finnish education system is the best. So if we look at and investigate an example over here from education, for example, Finland's approaching is mainly to involve listening and understanding the teachers, students, and what are their challenges. As a result of that, they are developing the best, I would say, the options for their education system. As you mentioned and emphasized, listening is the key over here. So, if we are diving into a bit more empathy and active listening, in your opinion, how does empathy and active listening help build a strong connections? What do you think about that? Because we are in the digital world at the moment.
Yeah, I think from the point of view of what I'm doing, I think the people, entrepreneurs or technology executives they are very much, trapped in their own world. Most of them come from the engineering background, software engineering, etc. And they are very much product focused. And, listening is not one of their best skills, obviously. They want to bring their products into the market, into life. And most of them are obsessed with what they are doing and generally think what they are doing is right and very good for the society. That may not be the understanding of other stakeholders. So, and they generally need help on understanding these ideas, on establishing empathy with the other stakeholders and getting to know their priorities. If you don't do that, you basically fail. And this is what has happened in the technology industry around the world for the last 5 to 10 years. We started with move fast and break things mantra of Facebook. And as you well know, in the rest of the history, since 2016, a lot of scandals happened. People lost trust to the technology companies. There has been data leakages. There has been intelligence listenings, etc., etc. The global public has actually had a backlash against technology, prominently because the technology leaders didn't have the empathy and active listening. They didn't listen to the stakeholders. Now, I think for the last few years, it is coming to balance again. These people also started to get help, started to understand the relationship systems, establish relevant functions in their companies, and, kind of became more empathetic. And I have to say that most people think empathy is a natural skill. It comes from from birth. And some people are empathetic and some are not. That's not the case. It's something that you can learn, you can develop, you can build. I myself have been diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome when I was 35. And this means you don't have empathy. It's one of the the symptoms of Asperger. But I have developed it over the years, probably before I was diagnosed, through active learning, maybe not in a very, intuitive way, but in a more mathematical way. If you want to develop your skills, if you want to understand the people that you are communicating with, that's feasible. And that's a skill. Just like building muscles in a gym, you can become more empathetic. You can become a more, active listener. These are all things that you can develop.
You mentioned again the important point about the listening part. And time to time, I'm also witnessing in my personal life as well. Most of the people just listen, but they don't listen literally to understand what their counterpart are talking about. They just listen to reply. They listen to reply, ignoring their counterparts' like opinion. So active listening is literally an important part that is focusing on to avoiding the people. So
yeah, listening out of respect is not something respectful, I think. If you're listening, you need to pay attention. That you need to actually think about the underlying reasons why that people says those things or thinks those things. It may not be the same thing. Some people say things that are different from their thought, and you should also be aware of that. So it should be the awareness that you put into that moment, discover the underlying dynamics of what the other person, the counterpart, is telling you. That's the critical part, not staying silent.
I believe right now we are being listened many Gen Z, maybe Gen Y listeners. So they were maybe agreeing or disagreeing on that point that we are talking about the importance of these skills. But I am curious about your opinion that why these skills, specifically empathy and active listening, are considered a future skills, especially for young generations like Gen Z. What do you want to tell directly to them?
Yeah. So I think given how the artificial intelligence has been progressing in the recent years and the expectation that it will progress even, exponentially in the upcoming years, how we see, all this ChatGPT, other generative AI, applications have emerged and how, they became able to conduct all easy or even complex technical tasks from, resolving math questions to writing code to writing speeches. I think where humans have the comparative advantage now lies with empathy and listening, because basically, at least for the moment, AI cannot have empathy, right? That's a very human skill. So the more we will leave these technical things to AI, I think the people who has more empathy skills will be more successful in the business life and certainly in the, personal space.
Here, I would like to recall one of the quotes that I always try to make myself remember when I feel that I lose to think about my opposite's opinion. From Alfred Adler, empathy is seeing with the eyes of another listening with the ears of another and feeling with the heart of another. So I'm not sure how are we going to comply or how are we being able to do that, but at least like we should always remember how the empathy and listening core skills are specifically very important for the Gen Z under these, the digital transformation and AI age. So with my final question that I would like to ask you about, we have already talked about the importance of these skills, but come to the next step. So in your opinion, how can Gen Z develop their active listening skills, and why is it these essential for their personal and professional success and the branding?
So I think, the quotation you gave was very good, but I also think it is dangerous to assume that empathy or listening is something sentimental, which is not. I think it can be quite mechanic, as I have told earlier, and it is very learnable. So I think if you frame it in a very sentimental way, like Adler has done, it's also kind of, frustrating for some people who doesn't have these skills from birth, right, from their upbringing, because some people are not educated in that way, but yet I think they can still acquire these skills if they force them to do so. And it is, if you want to yourself into the shoes of the people who are talking to you and understand their feelings, that's something that you can do from a very rational way, not in a sentimental way. And then you can act based on your information. Of course, you don't have to accept all the ideas. Probably you will not be able to change the counterparty's ideas. This is also very important. Most people don't change their ideas, but that's not important. You don't need to, convince everyone. What you need to do is to find a common ground between your ideas and the other party's ideas and proceed from there. Find a solution to your problem. So especially, the young people who are frustrated with life shouldn't get sentimental. Approach to these things in a very rational way and be very pragmatic, I think, to understand other stakeholders and find solutions that are win-win for everyone.
Some of them are saying that these skills, these soft skills, are coming from your natural aspect.
I
But I
disagree with
believe that
There are some people in that way. But there are also some people who are more naturally talented to math. There are some people who are more naturally talented for sports, right? But that doesn't mean you can't go to the gym. That doesn't mean you can't solve a math problem. These are all things that you can learn.
that is exactly what I was trying to tell. So even though these skills were not part of your natural competency set, you can nurture them. If you work on that, you can nurture for them to enhance in your future skills. Uh, so employing these specifically listening and empathy skill will be putting a lot of advantages in your professional and the personal success, as you also mentioned. So, Ussal, we are entering our last minutes. What do you want to tell and give your advice to the Gen Z audience?
I would like to repeat the same thing. Don't make this a big deal. Don't get sentimental. Just work on it. Be rational. Try to understand the counterparty and find the common ground.
Ussal, thank you. Our 12 minutes ended. Thank you for tuning in the 12 Minutes with Perch. Stay tuned to our next episode. This podcast is brought to you by Want Network and Bnote, platforms dedicated to fostering innovation and excellence in business. See you next time on 12 Minutes with Perch.